All right, before we get into the interview with me today to talk about that experience of meeting the deity himself, Adam Crafton is with us. Right, Adam, first of all, the interview sounded interesting, and I'm really fascinated by what you have to say about Zlatan. But how long did he leave you waiting before you got into that interview? Because, did he have an entourage? The aura of Zlatan precedes him.
There was no entourage. He was in New York, New Jersey with AC Milan as part of their preseason tour. They've been in the States during preseason, playing Man City, Real Madrid, Barcelona, and it's really as part of their really, really aggressive expansion or push into the United States that they've made Zlatan available on to certain platforms. I think he did a CBS morning show. He went to do the first pitch, which we spoke about at the Yankees Stadium. But they've also done other things like put Christian Pulisic, US national team player, onto the Jimmy Fallon show. So I think it's all part of that. Zlatan's new life, retired, is as an advisor to the AC Milan ownership. Which is an interesting thing. He goes to training twice a week to observe. Says he doesn't do any more than that because it's babysitting. And then says, I expect my players to be doing 200% even if I'm not there. So it's kind of everything you would have expected from Zlatan. But he was an hour early for the interview, and that was only, I think he just arrived back early from the training session that day, and it was kind of, I'm ready, are you ready? So the answer to that was yes, I think.
Let's go. From a journalistic perspective, though, and I know Zlatan's done so many interviews as Zlatan. I don't know if we've ever got to the core of who Zlatan really is, but what did you want to get out of the interview?
Um, I think there's certain interviews you do where you partly you want to have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think when people see, oh, well, Zlatan's been interviewed, I think it almost now comes with an expectation that he knows, that the journalist knows, that it's going to be fun, it's going to be a bit silly at certain points. But I think even like the most, there's all the things that you expect there to be, right? The third person references, the comparisons to God, uh, the comparisons to apex predators. But at the same time, like you do get the sense that he does believe quite a lot of what he says. So, like when I say to him, because if you actually just if you meet him, you look at him, he's 6'4", 6'5", he's broad, he's muscular, and I'd just been watching the Olympics that day, and I was like, he could walk into the Olympic Village still and look right at home. So it kind of crossed my mind and to say, like, which sport would you do at the Olympics? And his obvious answer to that is just kind of, well, I'd be the best at all of them. To be fair, all of them with a ball. But then he went on to talking about taekwondo, and,
Mm.
and actually, although there was like again some bravado within it, there was also like an interesting thing where he says, I was 6'5", but I kind of moved as though I was someone who was far, far smaller than that. And that's why I call myself a freak of nature. That's why I was able to do these incredible acrobatic things on a football pitch. So I think even when he says things which I mean, like you'll hear in the interview, like there's moments where I do just sort of laugh. And there's times where you're not quite sure, are you laughing with, are you laughing at? Are you in on the joke? Is he making a joke at your expense? Does he want you to really believe it? You're not quite sure. But he's almost so deep into Zlatan the person is almost so deep into Zlatan the brand at this point that it's hard to see where one starts and the other finishes. It's like if it was boxing, this guy would be the fighter and the promoter. And, and that's what he is now, right? And people, I think some people love it, Some people hate it. But I think the important thing is also to remember, like, this is one of the best footballers ever, right? At the same time, like you look at the clubs he played for and almost always won the title at as well. Ajax, Juventus, Inter Milan, AC Milan, Barcelona, PSG, Manchester United. It's almost like you're just going through Super League clubs one by one, right? He was at LA Galaxy for a short amount of time, and then had this extraordinary period, which I thought was actually kind of like the most impressive thing, really listening to him, where he talks about going back to AC Milan. Most players, when they go to LA Galaxy in their late 30s, that's the end. And it's quite a funny line where he says, I went to America to see if I was still alive after doing a really serious injury at Man United. And then I realized I was alive. And that's a problem, right? And he didn't mean that like disrespectfully, but it was just that fire was still there. So he goes back to AC Milan and he goes back to the youngest team at the time in Serie A and, takes on this really paternal role with a young team. Comes in when I think they're 11th in the league, averaging 1.2 points per game, and they go on, over the next season to win the league. And I think in his first press conference, he was asked who will win the league, and he said, which team does Zlatan play for? The reporter says Milan, and he says, then Milan will win the league, and they went on to win the league, and that's impressive. Like particularly when you compare it, I think, to some of the other players that we're seeing now at the end of their career, where it feels like they still seem to believe the team should be built around them, everything should go around them. I think the people there that I'm referencing, but I think for all his obvious ego, and there is still ego even in when he talks about his role there, right? Like there's an incredible line where he talks about his time back at Milan not being about ego, and then trying to decide the right phrase to describe that, and he just says, I think I was some kind of guardian angel for these players, right?
No ego involved in that at all. No.
Right? So, but it's fun, right? I think, if you are traveling to work, in the gym, whatever, it's 25 minutes of fun, and you'll enjoy it.
All right, fantastic. Let's hear that interview. It's Adam Crafton in a hotel in New Jersey speaking to the one and only Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
With your role now with Milan,
yes.
How do you describe what that role is?
My role is, I'm a senior advisor for the people in Milan and then for the ownership also. But in reality, I have a bigger role in that. And I have a finger in many categories to bring results and to bring up the value and make things better with an ambition to win.
And that's just from the playing side, or you're also looking
sports side and
commercial business?
Yeah, all these things. But I'm part of Redbird.
You're part of the broader group, right?
The ownership.
So
my responsibility is Milan.
Got you. Okay, so you wouldn't go to Toulouse or something like that?
No.
And how often are you at training or at games?
I mean, it's a daily work, but not every day in training. A couple of times in training, because I'm not a babysitter.
Right.
My players, they're adults, and they have to take responsibility, and they have to do 200% even when I'm not there.
You've obviously got children.
Yes.
Do you think that...
I hope they are mine.
Do you think that helped you when you came back to Milan as a player to be, I suppose, relate to the younger players that you were helping to develop?
When I came second time to Milan, I had a different role because it was more about giving. So in your whole career, you take, you give. Mm-hmm. But in this case, it was more about giving. So you open the way for the new generation. You show the way. You try to do everything to prepare them. You're the example in a way that, listen, this is how it works. Because when you're in Milan, it's the elite of the elite. A lot of pressure, a lot of demands, obligations. But at the same time, you have to be professional. You have to take responsibility. You have to be adult. You have to become a man, obviously, because it's not only about the player, it's also about the person outside. So all these things, I was the reference to show the path for the young guys. And I didn't have an ego that I am the man, I need to be in the center. Opposite. The team was in the center, and I was like some kind of, I would say, guardian angel for them. So all the pressure would come on me, not on them. But at the same time, I pressure them.
Right.
So...
Did you find that change difficult?
No,
to
no,
make?
no. Opposite. I enjoyed it, and I took even more space to do it and responsibility. So for me, it was not about if I score one more goal or I miss, it will not change my career. Because when you get older, you need to find trigger points. It's not about contracts or the adrenaline that you are in Milan, because you have to stimulate yourself. Because obviously, playing 25 years is not easy always to be on top. So you need to find trigger points. And one of my trigger points when I came back was to show the path for the young team.
Did you have any anxiety? It's maybe, I'm not sure Zlatan does anxiety or insecurity or nervousness, but when you were coming back from MLS and going back into top-level European football, and I imagine you knew that the media would be asking, can he still do it? Can he still have an
there were
impact?
questions. They say, who said, why should you succeed? That is one of the questions I got in the conference. Why should you succeed when everybody has failed to come a second time to same club? Because you have only to lose. Because, and I said, because I didn't lose the passion for what I'm doing. But insecurity, I don't feel that. No.
Never felt it?
No.
How?
Because if I'm objective, I go all in. Then on the way, either you can succeed or you can fail. 50-50. No. In my case, 99-1. So there is no failure. I don't think like that. I will succeed. I will do everything to succeed, and I know how to succeed. There is no, it's mental. It's all mental. I know how good I am.
When you say 99, you mean 99 success, 1 failure?
What was even higher for you? 99.9.
So what was the 0.1 in your mind?
Depending on you.
As in how you judge it yourself?
My surrounding.
Okay.
I am sure about myself. It was the 0.1 or 1% is depending on them. Either they follow or they go against. But whoever goes against fail.
Yeah.
And this time they followed like they always did.
If you were to just go back to your childhood,
yes,
a little bit, and does this mentality come from that for you?
I think it's a package of everything, from my family, from the neighborhood I was living in, what I went through, my surrounding, how I was treated, the circumstances around me, my situation in sense of I didn't have a lot of alternatives to do whatever I wanted, was very limited. So I think it's a package of everything, and that shapes you. So in the end, you're the one you are, but with more experience, the more year that goes. And
but I suppose one of the values that your parents gave to you?
I think discipline, because I was raised with my father, but I went to my mother every day. I think discipline. The first thing he taught me was discipline, and I followed the discipline, and that's until today. It follows me, and I give it to my children and for the team. So I think discipline is very, very important and brings you further in your life, but not only in football, in general. When you have discipline, you are right. Everybody has their different way of educating, different way of doing things. In my family, it is the hard way. And they came from difficult backgrounds and that, because I was born in Sweden and my parents met 10 years before the war. And then the war came in the picture, so the surrounding was very, very hard.
I was looking at some of your tattoos. Before the interview.
Yes.
Right? Because I think sometimes you can learn things about people from what they choose to...
I don't know if you learn a lot from my tattoos, but okay.
That's interesting. Okay.
Tell me my tattoos.
I can tell you...
No. Tell me position, and why.
Okay, so I think on your chest, or rib cage, you have only God can judge.
I don't have nothing on my chest, so you didn't study good.
Did I miss
I
that?
want to see. Is there something on my
Okay,
chest?
on your rib cage, right?
Okay, good.
Close though. Are you religious?
No,
So why do you have
I
only?
need respect.
Okay, so
Because if I tell you only God can judge me, who am I aiming?
who are you?
Aiming,
Who are you aiming?
yes.
All the critics?
No, who is God in this case?
Yourself?
Exactly.
Okay,
That's not religious.
and you genuinely believe that in your head? So in your life, you're God, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I will give you a perfect example. When my brother passed away, he had leukemia. Come si dice leukemia? Leukemia.
I'm sorry.
Where was God to help him?
Mhm.
You thank God every day, you pray for God, but where was God now?
Mhm.
In my world, you are your own God.
Mhm.
That's what I believe, and that's my mindset.
And I think on your back, again, you're going to tell me I'm not quite right. But
Bro,
ha-
you said to me, you study my back. My
Yeah.
tattoos good.
um,
Tell me, why are they in the back, my tattoos?
why are they on the back?
Yes.
So you can't see them,
Good.
right?
And what does that mean?
You're not interested in them,
No. Because when you see them, you get tired of them.
right?
So everything is behind. So I will never get tired.
Is that why you changed clubs a lot?
No. Change club is because I want to test myself how good I am in different environments. So I take my backpack and I come to your garden and I will show myself there, which is the most difficult part. That is what we said before, or the questions you gave me before, different cultures, different language, not my home, away from my home, far away from my home. So I'm testing myself. Because in your garden, your mother cooks for you, your mother cleans your clothes, you have everything you want, you're raised and born there, so you're in a comfort zone. I go away from comfort zone.
Is there anything you miss about being a player? Or
No.
were you just so ready to stop?
You know, my last year or maybe 2 years, what I went through to play football, you want to be happy. You want to feel free when you play football because then you enjoy it more and you can give much more and bring results. In the end, I suffered too much with my injuries. So even my mentality, I went against everything. But in the end, was like, I didn't enjoy it, and I felt I was not free enough to do what I wanna do.
Yeah.
Why suffer, do something when you had the taste of 20 to 22 years of freedom and play the game like you want. But also I was in a situation, remember, I was there to give back. So all these kids, so I could have operated or stopped before, but I didn't do it for me. I did it for them. So I hold out and I really pushed it until the end. First, I was in a phase by my ego. I didn't want to stop because my ego was, I'm the best. I can still do it. But then I understood, it's not, my head says one thing, my body did another thing.
Yeah.
So it didn't connect in a way that I wanted. Then I accepted to stop. And when you accept, you go further. That's why I tell you, I don't miss it.
Yeah.
Because I accepted it.
Yeah. Was there any part of you when you came to America where you thought, actually, this would be the end, and then you were surprised when it came around?
You know
again?
what? My thing to come to America, because I had a bad injury in United, and I was away around 8-10 months. So when I came back, it was in the middle of the season, and everything was like, whoa. I was not feeling comfortable. Everything was like, it was like starting from zero. And I spoke to Mourinho, I spoke to the club. I said, listen, I think I need to go away from this because it was my first major injury. Never happened. I want to see if I'm still alive. So I want to give it a chance from zero. And then the American opportunity came up, the Galaxy. And I said, let's go there and see if I still can play my game like I want. And not just to be there because I'm Ibrahimovic, because I'm not like that. Because I'm there to bring you results and to play my game. So America was to see if I was still alive.
And you were still alive.
And then I felt I was still alive, and that became a problem.
Because you were too alive for that.
Exactly.
Right.
So I needed to go back where I belong. This is not being disrespectful
No, of course.
to US. I enjoyed. They made me feel alive, and I'm very thankful. And I had an amazing time, not 1 year, 2 years, and it's part of my life, let's say, part of my career.
I think what you did at the end of your career with the young players in particular is incredibly unique. You see a lot of players almost raging against the dying of the light in their career. And this summer, for example, when I was watching the Euros and you watch Cristiano in the Portugal team, it's a different perspective, to me. But I'm curious how you felt when you watched some of these other players towards the end of this career. I can see you smiling.
I think it depends on the person. What do you want? I told you before, I didn't need to score 1 goal more or 1 goal less. It would not change my career. It was more about preparing the future for the other ones. Because I believe this young generation, they need an example and a leader to follow. And that will open up for them to take over and to continue, and then for them to do the same thing. Because if you don't have these examples, these leaders, especially when you're playing great clubs, who will show the way?
Did you have these people in your career?
Yeah, many.
Like who?
So I had Capello that was destroying me and at the same time building me.
How would he destroy you?
Easy. Today you were shit, tomorrow you're the best.
Right.
And then it would go like that. So when you think you're the best, he would destroy you. Then it becomes confusion and you don't know, fuck, am I really best or am I shit? So when you were down, he was building you up. So it went on.
Did that work?
I became the best, so yes.
Did you like it at the time, the way he was?
I didn't understand. Didn't know what was going on. So he made my head, it was like there was no balance. So it was like this. But it made me always give 200%. And then he shaped me. So that is what I mean. You need those. Then you need also an identity and culture and a tradition from the club. Because who are you as a club? Because when you come in the club, a winner creates winners. Loser don't create winners. So, and that's a culture. So when you come in the club, that you're a potential player, talent, and that the club will shape you because you will understand the way you work, the way the surrounding is. Because everybody that is in Milan, they have this ambition, and it spreads. That's why we are a great club.
Was that maybe the challenge in Manchester, that at the time the kind of identity and culture of the club wasn't quite right?
For me, Manchester was already a historical and great club. It was only about bringing results. And obviously they work different from what I was used to, but you bring your own thing and you mix it up with the club. So
in what way different?
I mean, for me, United, you're just a number, I felt. You're not
so you just felt like
I was just a player.
Right.
They brought me in, do your job, and in my mindset, I'm like, when I go in, I want to do history. I want to make my own history. I was not interested in what happened before, with all the respect. Yes, that brings pressure to you because you have to live up to what they were used to or what they went through. But I was not interested in listening to the 92 year.
The class of 92.
That doesn't help me because it's not my team. And I wanted to do my own history. Own like future people would say, yeah, you want this, United won this, and I was part of it. So that is my mentality.
But you obviously went to play for Jose as well.
Yeah.
Was that the way
Two times.
2 times, but he brought you to Manchester.
Yeah.
What you did when you came to England? Because I think at that time United had other players, other strikers, kind of towards the end of their career that hadn't really worked out at that time. So people like Falcao came.
I am a freak of nature. I'm a different species. You don't compare me with other ones. Because the way I work, I'm not like the other ones. I was 35 years old. I came to England. People said, I'm too old. Like you say, I should retire, blah, blah, blah. But this triggers me. This, I will prove you. I told you, you need to find your trigger points. And this was one of my trigger points also.
Was Jose good at finding your trigger points?
Jose was a machine. He brings the best out of you.
Why?
He's that person, manipulative. He knows how to get in your head and bring the best out of you. He knows how to treat you. He knows how to handle you. Independent what level you are, he will bring the best out of you.
How did he do that with you then? Can you give an example?
He reminded me of Fabio Capello, but newer version.
Right.
So, discipline. Hardcore, in sense. They're not the soft types. This is what I like. Remember where I came from. My family is...
Tough.
Yes.
Do you think younger players now can handle that?
I think it's different generations. You have to adapt and you still have to be yourself in what you believe in. I don't change for the new generation. I try to change and be an impact for them and be the example. But then obviously new things, the game changes, the game improves, the game gets better. So, but I think having these example leaders, you just pass it on.
Is there any part of you, now that you're in a senior role at a club, that makes you look differently at other parts of your career? So like things you've said previously about Pep and Barcelona, now that you're in this more senior position, you're watching training rather than being in training. Has it made you at all change the way that you look back on that, or not at all?
No. It was like that then, and it's still like that now. It's part of my how do you say, my history, how it was. But you mean if I think different now, what was happening at that time, the way I was thinking at that time? No, I don't think different.
Does it make you understand in any way the way that Pep managed you, or not really?
No. The problem with Pep was we resolved in 1 minute. Just tell me what the problem is. Easy. But I never knew what the problem was.
When you look at all the clubs you've been at, is Milan, because the first period at Milan was only 2 years. It wasn't a really long period of time, and 1 year was a loan as well. So why do you identify so strongly with Milan?
Because Milan first time gave me happiness.
Right.
Second time they gave me love.
And the first time was happiness because you were kind of escaping what was previously quite negative.
It was not
at Barcelona.
what I was used to and what I wanted. First 6 months good, the last part of the season was not good. And the Milan gave me happiness at that time because I told you, if you're not happy, it's not easy to do your job and do it good. And the second time was love. So I am very strongly linked to Milan, and I want nothing but the best for Milan. Obviously, I want to win. I have high ambitions, like everybody else has in the club, and we work the way we do, in our way. We don't look at other ones. They look at us. So, and the history of the club is massive, but we want to continue. We don't get stuck by the old past, present and future.
Your son is now playing in Milan. Did you want him to be a footballer?
It's not easy. It's not tricky, but the situation is what it is, and it's not easy for him because obviously his father is who he is. Well, you know already. I like this.
So I thought we'd save time and say it, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Go direct. Don't run around that. So he carries a heavy last name. Yeah, wherever he goes, he will always be compared. Doesn't matter if he's the different position and that. But I don't see him different from other ones. How to judge? I don't judge him as my son. I judge him as a player, like I judge all the other players in the first team, in the Futuro, and even Primavera. He has to learn, he has to work, and he has to earn. Then what happens, happens. So it's his own way, it's his own story to be said. And he's being strong mentally. Then people think football is easy, everybody arrives. It's not the case.
But I imagine his upbringing is so different to yours,
Mine, 100%.
right? Because he would have been incredibly comfortable.
Yes, 100%. But it's up to him what he wants.
So how does he get that drive?
He gets that drive by indifferent. This you have to ask him because
Right.
it will be his answer. I can only talk as a father, and
Or how have you tried to instill that drive into him?
I gave him the discipline, I gave him the respect, and I gave him the hard work thing. You want something, you work for it. You will not get nothing for free here. And that is not only in the game he's doing, also as a private life. Because my job as a father is to make him independent when he grows up. If I don't make him independent, I failed. That is a responsibility as a father. But I try to keep the balance, obviously, because when I was young, my father couldn't give me what I could give my son today.
Of course.
So it's a different... It doesn't mean I should give my same treatment to my son, because my father did it the best he could for what it was to me. And I'm doing the same thing for my sons, but with a balance, because I need to show them the way in life. Then he chose to play football, both of them, because the other one is coming now also, but I keep silence.
How old is the younger one?
He's 2008. But they know I am the father. They know it's not easy.
And he's also training in
Milan.
Milan Academy,
Yes, yes. So it's their own story to tell, you say. So let's see what happens. I'm just happy for him. He needs to work hard. He knows what it's all about. It's a learning phase, yeah. At the same time, I'm very proud of both of them. I couldn't be more proud than as a father for what is going on.
If I was to look at if I was to be invited to your home in Sweden, not sure how likely that is.
Are you inviting yourself, or you wait for an invitation?
It might be quicker to invite myself.
Okay. Because not many has been in my house.
Really? From football?
In general. Only
in-
the people who build it, but after that, nobody, my family is not like that. We are very isolated.
Would you know, if I was in your house, would I know that you had played football at a really high level? As in, are there pictures? Do you keep things
No.
visible?
No, zero.
Why?
You would know by the materials.
Because it's
Things
expensive.
that I made money by playing, which is no secret. That you would notice that I have things maybe that is not normal in a normal home, let's say. And if you would never notice that I was football player in my home, because I don't have even one picture on me in my home.
Wow.
Because my wife said, we see you so much in general, I don't need to see you at home. So zero picture.
Okay. And do you
Zero. If you go to my boys' room, you will find some shirts, players, but their own, what they ask for. But for me, I have a basement with all my trophies, with all my history when it comes to football, which shouldn't be like that, because I'm going to build a museum and put all of them there. But
Where will you build the museum?
in my home, I think in my home, because I think the only thing I have home, it's in my gym. I don't know, it's a famous picture of my 2 feet.
Right, okay.
That is for my family to know where everything comes from.
You scored a lot with your head.
No, that was the end of my career. Not for that house. That house was more my fees that was sponsoring. So they have to know where everything comes from these 2 feet. That is, you don't forget where it comes from. That's the only thing I have. It's in the gym, because that is where they have to pass, because my family is very active in training. But to the other question, for the museum, I want to have, because it's part of my story.
Yep.
I want to make something nice, because this is what I achieved. This is what I went through, who I was, who I am. Important. But for the moment, she put it in the basement. So let's see. It's either the museum or it's her. I have to still think about it.
Is there a transfer during your career that you wish you had made?
It's all destiny.
All destiny.
Everything that happened was supposed to happen. I don't have any regrets. I enjoyed every minute. People might say, yeah, Barcelona was not good. Listen, success doesn't come only from success. It comes also from moments that is less good and difficult. Because you even learn more from those moments than when you're successful. So that helped me. It changed me as a person. It made me say that, listen, anything can happen at any moment. It switches very fast. So it was part of my destiny.
Zlatan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Adam Crafton's fascinating interview with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and you can actually read it right now on The Athletic, so make sure you go check that out as well. Adam, I love the last bit where you sort of semi-invited yourself back to Zlatan's house. Respect to that. Do you think you'll make it into the museum at least, or maybe your interview might?
Well, I wasn't. It sounded like I was inviting myself into his house, and that's how he interpreted it. It was actually the first half of a question where I was attempting to say, if I was to be invited into your house, would I be able to tell that you were a footballer? As in, I was kind of curious to know, are there pictures of himself as a deity all over this?
You're just trying to get a sense of how self-obsessed he actually is, right?
Right, and not self-obsessed, almost like self-reverential.
Okay,
I would say. And he obviously quickly interjected, and it went in a slightly different way. But it was interesting. I mean, he said that his wife basically doesn't allow any pictures of him at home. So there is clearly someone keeping him firmly in check. But he's managed to get this picture of his feet into the family gym. And he said, to be fair, he said his family's pretty active, so they're always seeing his feet because they are what sponsor his home. So that was pretty funny. But yeah,
nice. I'm listening to this interview, and obviously it's edited, and obviously we've put the best bits in, but I couldn't help but like him as a human being anyway. I know there's a bravado and there's a brand and all those kind of things. We all have perceptions of people before we meet them. Did that interview change your mind of what you thought about Zlatan, or change your perceptions of him?
No, I think he kind of veers between bravado and real sincerity. And I think that there are times in that interview where he talks really quite genuinely, to be fair. I think this, when he's talking about leadership, and when he talks about, leadership in reference to those, Milan young players, when he talks about, what his parents instilled into him, had a really tough upbringing, really challenging upbringing. And he did, I felt he softened during that bit. There was less jokes. When he was talking about that, and also when he was talking about his kids as well. It's interesting, when he talks about himself, I imagine he would have said things like, I'm the greatest and all this sort of stuff. He didn't make any of those kind of predictions for his children, and it was way more around, even though he's saying, I wouldn't treat them any differently in my role at Milan, he's also saying, not everyone makes it, right? Not everyone makes it. Football's not easy. So it's just my job to make kind of independent people. And I think that was a kind of a different side to him, slightly. And also, I suppose, in the kind of deference he still has for, people like Fabio Capello, Jose Mourinho during his career. He was also pretty cautious on Pep Guardiola, who he has, absolutely slagged off repeatedly for a decade. And this time it was a bit more, I'd kind of said to him, I don't think this was in the cut, but I kind of said, given that you have this role within Milan, where you're now seeing the other side of a football club, right? You're watching people train, and you're involved in recruitment and choosing managers and all this kind of thing. Does it give you more I suppose, empathy for the way you were managed at Barcelona? And the answer to that was no. But there wasn't quite the same kind of, I suppose, anger and resentment about it. And it was really interesting when City played Milan last week at the Yankee Stadium. Pep came up to him and shook his hand, and they kind of had a pretty awkward hug. And then Zlatan posted it on Instagram with the caption, "Just a friendly game." So I'm not sure. This video only made it out after we'd actually done the interview, which is a bit of a shame. So I'm curious to know, has there been a real kind of soothing between them? He definitely didn't want to sort of pour fuel on that. So, in some ways, I think it's just a different stage of life, right?
We're all grown up. There was something you mentioned, Capello and Mourinho there, and I think something that really cut through was this idea of being challenged. I think he saw a respect in Mourinho and Capello, who loved to sort of play mind games with him. You can see him doing this sort of Rubik's Cube in his head of what did they want from me, and I guess the word clarity was also interesting when he talked about Pep Guardiola. He's like, I just need you to be clear with me. But the overarching thing was, I need to be challenged. I need someone to be able to step up to me and say, son, you need to get your act together, And I like that. He needs to be challenged. He wants to be challenged moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that's even the case now, when I was asking him, what are you going to do? Right? Like when he created this really vivid picture, where he talks about what it's the feeling of performing in front of 80,000 people, right? And how you can be the smallest person and you feel so much bigger, and how it feels to make 80,000 people bounce or 80,000 people cry. And, that's who he says he was. And it's pretty true. So therefore, how do you replace that? And I think, it's interesting where he talks about taekwondo. He talks about sort of missing those jewels, right? And missing that kind of feeling of just being alive in some way. And I think he is considering things like movies. I remember I interviewed Cantona probably about a year, 2 years ago. It was so similar as an interviewing experience, right? You're kind of with this person where it's going to be a fun interview. There's going to be single lines that are just like crazy and make people laugh or make people angry or make people confused. Has that kind of commitment as well, but also that almost poetry at times, right? Like when he says, Milan, the first time they gave me I think that Milan, the first time they gave me happiness, the second time they gave me love, right? Like it's quite literary almost at times in the way that he speaks. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him attempt something, movie-wise, particularly because the Milan ownership as well, Redbird, has huge investment now into media and entertainment. They've just done an investment into Paramount in the US. So I really wouldn't be surprised at all to see Zlatan go slightly down that road. Obviously said he doesn't want to be a head coach. And he's 42. He's got a lot of life left.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I still couldn't quite decipher, and maybe give me some clarity on this, is what is his actual role at Milan, right? Like he talks about like coming to training and maybe not being there all the time, but still expecting so much more from this team. And he called them his players, right? But he's not the coach or the manager. But then I'm just scrolling through. I was looking at his social media. It's got 85 or 65 million followers on Instagram, and AC Milan have maybe 16. So this is someone who's also bigger than the club as a global brand. We're looking at a time where football teams are looking to reach out to new audiences and all that kind of stuff. You can't discount the fact that Zlatan is at Milan for a broader commercial project.
I think it's twofold. So there's, as I said, Redbird are this aggressive sport entertainment brand. Zlatan is in himself a sports media and entertainment brand, right? Like, where does Zlatan the person becomes Zlatan the brand, and when does Zlatan the brand stop becoming Zlatan the person? Um, and that's what we've seen in the States. He's been absolutely at the center of what they wanted to do here. But they've also done, while they've been out here, they did tie-ups with the Chicago Bulls. They did something with the NFL to launch their away kit. So it's very deliberate, some of this from Milan. But I think there is also a genuine respect from the Milan ownership and actually still the dressing room for Ibrahimovic, as a result of the way he went about the last couple of years of his career, helping the team to win the league, helping these players to develop and grow up, and they value his input. Two of his kids are obviously on the Milan Bucks, again, which shows. I think it's interesting when you actually look at his career. Obviously, he spent his last couple of years at Milan. But his first spell at Milan, I think half of it was alone. The second year was obviously a bit more permanent, but then he left it straight away. So it's interesting that he has developed this kind of love affair with the club, because he wasn't there for that long, really. But I think it is truly around what he did at the end, and I think that changed perceptions for quite a lot of people of him.
Does it surprise you that when he talks about legacy, it's actually not necessarily about being on the pitch and scoring goals? We spoke about certain players that are still holding on, and still trying to relive the past. Did it surprise you that the actual legacy meant giving something back to people?
Yeah, well, yeah, actually, he wasn't sitting there talking about, I scored this goal against them, this goal against them, this goal against them. And he talked about having, needing these triggers, right? And maybe if, we did that interview when he was age 27, he'd be talking about a scissor kick or a bicycle kick that he'd done 3 weeks earlier, or some fight that he'd picked on the pitch. Whereas, he said, the trigger, I needed triggers and motivations towards the end of my career. And the one that I found was, taking a young squad and helping them to be successful. I mean, it was interesting because he was in different environments towards the end of his career. Talks about Manchester United and finding that a very different experience, finding it very different. He says it's different to what I was used to. And, again, like he'll always give you a good line. He'll say, I wasn't interested in the class of 92, right? I wasn't interested in listening to them. And he doesn't mean that as in, I don't rate Gary Neville, or I don't rate Paul Scholes, or I don't rate David Beckham or whatever. It's just, I'm here in 2016. They're not here anymore. So Alex Ferguson's not the manager anymore. So my priority, if I'm being paid by a club, this is how I interpreted what he said, is I want to win, and I want to win with the club, and I want people to talk about Manchester United winning things with me together. And that doesn't mean that, I need to listen to this kind of circle all the time. And it kind of makes me wonder how many other players who've been through the club might think that way. And again, it's not any disrespect to those people or those players, but it's an interesting perspective. And I actually think it's a perspective that those guys would probably, I don't think those guys would be annoyed actually listening to that, the way he explained it. It's, I'm here now and I want to create our own history with the team I'm currently in. I would be very, very surprised if it's not the kind of approach that a Roy Keane would have, to be honest, right? Like, you want to hear about what would happen 15 years ago, you'd want to be winning now.
Fantastic. Well, I tell you what, really, really enjoyable interview. Adam, thank you so much for your time, and do not forget to check out his Zlatan piece on The Athletic right now. I mean, if you're also in...
my time is very expensive. As Zlatan told me repeatedly.
Technically, you only speak to people like Zlatan now, so, Ayo Akinwolere doesn't hold the same credence, does it? Like,
Absolutely.
All right. Adam, thoroughly appreciate it, brother. Now, if you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to leave us a review or send us an email with your thoughts on topics we discuss or you'd like us to cover. Get in touch on tafcpod@theathletic.com. We'll be back tomorrow for another deep dive into the biggest story from the world of football. Thanks for listening. If you want to watch more episodes of the show, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season. If you'd like to listen to the episodes in full in audio form, search The Athletic FC wherever you get your podcasts from.